how to use your character sheet. So I made a half-elf bard to show you guys how to do this. Bards can do a little bit of everything, so just about everything should be covered. This is T.F.A. Just a fun name I chose. Okay, so this thing looks complicated, but once you break it down, it's actually not. So these guys right here, these are your ability scores. This is how good you are at just kind of like what you are, what your personality is, what your strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, charisma, just who you are as a person. The score is actually this smaller number down here, but what really matters is the modifier. So every 2 points after 10, you get +1 to your modifier. So your dex modifier of T.F.A. is +2, but her wisdom modifier is -1. What does that mean? She's pretty gullible or not very streetwise. Probably gets into a lot of trouble. That's wisdom. Intelligence, she's, smarter than average, but charismatic, so she can probably talk her way in and out of a lot of stuff. Your proficiency bonus doesn't actually matter until I say it does, or you have a specific spell, so ignore that. Your walking speed, that's how fast you move. That is how much movement you can make during a round. Inspiration, if you click it, you get that little thing. Bam, bam. Inspiration is a token that I, as the DM, can give you to let you re-roll something, or to roll with advantage. That is something I personally give out if people make me laugh or do really good roleplay. Over here is your health or your hit points. So you have your max, what your character can be at full health, which for T.F.A. is 10, and you have your current hit points. Temporary is something else, don't worry about that unless I talk about it. So say you take damage, we roll, it's like, oh, you take 5 damage. Using this web thing, you do, oh, I take 5 damage, and now your current hit points are 5 out of 10. Now, say somebody decides to heal you. Say your cleric is like, oh, I heal thee, and they roll a 5. Well, then you heal for 5, and now you're back at your max hit points. Going over to here, these are your saving throws. Certain spells, certain effects, certain things that might damage you, you have a chance to get out of if you're strong enough, fast enough, or charismatic enough. So these will only come into play kind of if I say to, but this is where they are. These are the saving throws. And these modifiers here, the +5, the -1, those affect your roll. Now this little thing, you'll see like a little A or D on here, or nothing at all. That is if you have advantage or disadvantage on certain things. So if I say, do a saving throw against a charm spell, you have advantage. That means you can roll twice. Over here, these are your senses, like how you can see and how far. So you have dark vision, so you can see in low light environments up to 60 feet. This is also your passive wisdom, intelligence, your passive insight. So these are basically just walking around, how well you notice things, how much you pick up on stuff, and under kind of what circumstances. I will have these written down myself, and I'll kind of work that into the game on my own. Proficiencies in language, what type of armor you can use, what type of weapons you can use, what kind of tools you can use, and what languages you speak. So T.F.A. can speak Common, Elvish, and Gnomish. That's all role play. If I have a character that speaks Gnomish, T.F.A. will recognize it as Gnomish. Just look at her proficiency. It's like, oh, that dude's speaking Gnomish. I can understand him. And then I have to explain to her what he's saying, even if the rest of the party can't. These right here are your skills. You will use these a lot. So part of why you roll with the dice is if you try to do a thing that has a chance of failure, I will make you roll for it. So you say like, oh, I want to do a backflip. I want to do a backflip over this thing and shoot a guy. That's acrobatics, so I'll make you roll an acrobatics. So you roll your d20, and since you have an acrobatics of +4, you get to add that to your roll, which means you have a greater chance of doing it. What's another one? Deception, so you want to lie to somebody. So a guard saying like, hey, what's that in your hand? And you go, oh, it's nothing, sir. there's a chance he won't believe you, so I'll make you roll for that, but you get +5 to the roll anytime you're lying to somebody or using deception. What's a good negative one? Okay, animal handling. Say you see like a stray dog and you're like, oh, I want to pet it. Animal handling. You take a -1 to try to interact with that animal. Initiative. Every time you go to, when we take turns in combat, you roll for initiative to see who goes when, and you, Tabitha Christie, adds +2 to any of her rolls because she's fast. Armor class, that's how difficult you are to hit. It's either the strength of your armor and or how fast you are, how much you bob and weave and move around. Conditions, that's if you're put to sleep or something like that. I'll let you know if you need to add something. And defenses, that's if you're resistant, immune, or vulnerable to something. That comes from species. I don't think that comes into play for anyone, but if you see something like that, remember it, let me know. In fact, I'll have it written down for anybody so I'll know about that. Now, for any and all of these, if you don't know what something is, click on it, and there you go. Armor class. Your armor, you have no armor right now, but you have a +2 dexterity bonus. So your armor class is 12, and it kind of says here, oh, your armor class represents blah, blah, blah. So if you're unsure of something like your walking speed or proficiency or your charisma, you can just click on it and see. Now into the meat and potatoes of this, the actions. This is kind of what you can do. So these top things are the biggest stuff: actions, spells, equipment, etc. And then under actions, it's bottom stuff. So let's just go to... Okay, hold on. So during a turn in combat, you can move, you can take an action, and you can take a bonus action. A bonus action is something really fast that won't take your full turn. You can do it before or after your action. We'll get into that. The most common actions are things like attack. So we'll go in here. So attack. So Tabitha Christie can stab with her dagger or punch something. Here are the damage modifiers. We'll get into that a little bit later, but so she can attack or do an arm attack. Other actions she can take, she can attack, cast a spell, dash, disengage, dodge, grapple, help. These are all different things you can do. If you're unsure about any of them, click on it and you can learn a little bit about that. Bonus actions. The only bonus action Tabitha Christie has available to her is Bardic Inspiration, which is a really neat thing. It's a class feature. It's something that she can do for being a bard. You can read about it if you want, but basically right here, you see these 3 little blocks / long rest. That means you can do 3 of them per day. So you just mark off if you do one, mark off if you do one, mark off if you do one. You can't do any more until you take a long rest, and then you get them all back. Get rid of that. Reaction, don't worry about that unless you have something special. Other limited use. The limited use would be your bonus action for Bardic Inspiration. Now, Tabitha's a bard, so she also has access to spells. So we go over to spells. They're broken down by spell level. Cantrips are innate magic. They don't take any energy. You can do them at will. So at any time it's your turn or any time during roleplay, you can just go ahead and do them. So Tabitha has Prestidigitation, which lets her do a lot of visual magic, a lot of different effects. Certain things you can click on it and read about it. And Vicious Mockery, which is a really neat bard thing where you actually insult someone so bad it does psychic damage and they do worse their next turn. But you can do these at any point. It's not a problem. Now, when you go down to the actual spells, like 1st, 2nd, 3rd, any other levels like that, you have spell slots, and that depends on your intelligence, charisma, whatever your casting ability is. So Tabitha has 2 first-level slots. So that means she can cast, say, Charm Person on somebody, and it takes up a slot, and then later she's damaged, and she can cast Cure Wounds. And then she has no more spells until the next day. Equipment, this is the stuff you have. She has a backpack, a bedroll, a candle, different things. But if you go down here, she has armor and weapons that weren't under her possible actions because they're not equipped. So if you look at the armor class and you look at the armor here, the light armor, the leather, we click on it and her armor class went up because she's now wearing the armor. So we'll just equip the rapier and the crossbow, her other things, and we go back to actions, attack or otherwise. Now she can use the crossbow or her rapier. So now when she wants to attack, she could attack with the crossbow, the dagger, or the rapier. Features and traits. These are bonuses you get for being a certain race, a certain class, or picking up certain things. So she can cast spells because she's a bard, and there's some information about that. She has bardic inspiration. She's a half-elf, so she has dark vision, Fey ancestry, so she can't be put to sleep, and has a few extra skills. Down in description, you have a background, and that gives you a few bonus things. It's kind of like where your character came from. And we can go down here. These are fun things that are mainly just for you or to describe to the group. Alignment, gender, eye color, size. So if we click on these, we can actually fill them out. So alignment, let's just make her chaotic neutral. She likes to stab things, but she's not necessarily a bad person. Her lifestyle, don't worry about that. That is not something that's going to come into play. Hair color, purple. Yeah. Eye color, height, whatever. Gender, you see it's non-binary. You can actually type in whatever you want. So, fluid. She just cares about stabbing. These are things you can... Hold on, just click out of that. Personality traits, ideals, bonds, flaws. These are really cool things that help you with roleplay. What does my character care about? What is my character? What are their ideals? What matters to them? Bonds. What people? What things do they have connections to? Flaws. Is she a kleptomaniac? Is she a compulsive liar? Does she talk in the movies? So if you can add these things as you want. It just helps you get a little bit more flavor of your character and make it more fun. We go over to notes. These are just things you can add. I recommend working on these as stuff happens. So backstory, likes to stab. So say we're playing the game and you end up hating a character, or there's somebody you have a dislike for and you want to write it down so you make sure you remember. So under enemies, you can put, I hate Jared from Subway. He knows what he did. Harden Jared. Okay. So now when you're playing, you're like, oh, I'm going to stab this, I'm going to do this. It's like, oh, this other character stepped in, and someone referred to him as Jared, and you go to your notes and you're like, holy crap, I know a Jared. I hate Jared. And so, this just helps you keep track of different things. If you make friends, if you join an organization, it's a section to literally take notes.